Have you ever read a verse so rich in feeling, so drenched in longing, that it feels like the soul behind it is trying to burst out of the body and dissolve into something greater? One of those verses might go something like this. I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? These are the words of Jalal al-Din Rumi, mystic, poet, philosopher, a man whose words have transcended centuries, languages, and cultures. His poetry pulses with emotion, but more importantly, it pulses with spiritual intensity. It's more than just art. It's a map of the soul seeking its source. But what if I told you that behind Rumi's mesmerizing words lies a powerful spiritual philosophy, a path of surrender, transformation, and divine love known as Sufism? Welcome to the unfolding journey, where we dive deep into the hidden currents of thought, history, spirituality, and the inner landscapes of the soul. If you're drawn to timeless wisdom, poetic beauty, and the mystical traditions that have shaped human understanding, you're in the right place. Today, we explore the profound influence of Sufism on Rumi's thought and poetry, tracing how core Sufi concepts like the annihilation of the self, Fana, divine intoxication, Sukr, and remembrance, Dhikr, form the beating heart of his work. Let's begin this sacred exploration. Before we can understand Rumi, we must briefly understand Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam that emphasizes the inner, experiential dimension of faith. Whereas formal religion might focus on law and ritual, Sufism is concerned with direct union with the divine. It teaches that the self, the ego, is a veil between the human and God, and that through love, remembrance, and surrender, one can transcend the ego and awaken to divine reality. Sufism is not merely a philosophy. It is a lived path, often transmitted through spiritual mentorship, ritual practice, poetry, music, and above all, love. Rumi was not just influenced by Sufism. He lived it, and he was transformed by it, most notably through his spiritual relationship with Shams of Tabriz, the wandering mystic whose arrival shattered Rumi's identity and catalyzed his poetic genius. One of the most fundamental Sufi ideas is Fana, or the annihilation of the self. This concept refers to the dissolution of the ego in the overwhelming presence of God. The self is seen not as the ultimate reality, but as an illusion, a temporary form that must be shed in order to encounter truth. Rumi returns to this theme again and again. For him, love is the fire that burns away the ego. In his words, "Be like a melting snow, wash yourself of yourself." This line may sound simple, but it is a radical spiritual instruction. To wash yourself of yourself is to let go of attachments, identities, and even your sense of I. Only then, says Rumi, can the divine presence be fully experienced. In the Masnavi, Rumi's 6-volume spiritual epic often referred to as the Quran in Persian, countless stories illustrate this principle. Whether through parables of lovers, kings, or wayfarers, the message is consistent. True awakening comes only after the self is surrendered. Knock and he'll open the door. Vanish, and he'll make you shine like the sun. Fall, and he'll raise you to the heavens. Become nothing, and he'll turn you into everything. In Sufism, to become nothing is not defeat, it is divine victory. In Rumi's spiritual vision, the self is not the center of the universe, God is. And the journey of the soul is one of unlearning, of peeling away illusions until only the beloved remains. Another essential Sufi theme in Rumi's poetry is Sukr, or divine intoxication. This is not intoxication in the earthly sense. It refers to the overwhelming ecstasy that can result from divine love. The state where the soul becomes so absorbed in God that the boundaries between self and other dissolve, and only love remains. Rumi uses metaphors of drunkenness and wine constantly. But in his lexicon, wine is a symbol for divine love, and intoxication is a metaphor for spiritual ecstasy. I am so drunk with love that I no longer know myself. I am no longer mine. These are not mere poetic flourishes. They reflect Rumi's experience of losing himself in the vastness of divine presence. The imagery of drunkenness captures the sense of ecstatic surrender, of losing rational control in favor of a deeper, more primal unity. Interestingly, this imagery often confused or scandalized more literal-minded religious authorities. But within the Sufi context, it is part of a long tradition of expressing the ineffable through metaphor. This intoxication is not irrationality, it's super-rationality. It's about being overwhelmed by the divine mystery, about becoming so attuned to love that logic bows in reverence. Perhaps the most essential Sufi practice, and one deeply embedded in Rumi's work, is Dhikr, or remembrance. At its core, Dhikr is the constant remembrance of God, both outwardly through prayer and inwardly through awareness. It's the practice of aligning every breath, every thought, with the divine presence. Rumi's entire poetic corpus can be seen as one long act of Dhikr. His verses are not just descriptions of the beloved, they are invocations. They are written not just to express longing, but to awaken it. Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure. Don't run from your heart's ache. It's your reminder to remember. For Rumi, even suffering is a form of Dhikr because it draws the heart back to the source. In fact, longing itself is a divine gift, the echo of separation reminding the soul where it belongs. This remembrance is not passive. It's active. Rumi often speaks of dancing, whirling, singing, not as entertainment, but as spiritual practices meant to dissolve the ego and attune the soul to God. This is where Rumi's connection to the Mevlevi order, the whirling dervishes, comes in. Founded by his followers after his death, this Sufi order made Sima, whirling meditation, a central ritual. The dancer turns in circles, symbolizing the soul's orbit around the divine. All of these concepts, Fana, Sukr, Dhikr, revolve around one central axis in Rumi's thought, love. For Rumi, God is not an abstract concept or distant creator. God is the beloved. Love is both the path and the destination. Love is the bridge between you and everything. He writes of love not as emotion, but as the fundamental force that moves all things. Love shatters the ego, intoxicates the soul, and draws us into remembrance. Love is how the self is annihilated and the divine is known. And yet, love is also suffering. Rumi does not shy away from the pain of longing. In fact, he embraces it as sacred. In the aching absence of the beloved, he finds the presence of the beloved. This is deeply Sufi. To the Sufi, separation is illusion, but it's an illusion that drives the yearning that leads us home. It's impossible to speak about Rumi's transformation without mentioning Shams of Tabriz. Before meeting Shams, Rumi was a respected religious scholar. After Shams, he became a burning mystic, a poet, a lover. Their meeting was a spiritual earthquake, a meeting of souls that transcended form. Shams didn't just teach Rumi about Sufism, he embodied it. And in losing Shams, who either disappeared or was killed, Rumi was plunged into the furnace of longing. It was this pain that alchemized his poetic genius. In Sufism, the teacher-student relationship is not just instructional, it's initiatory. Shams was the spark that ignited Rumi's fire, and that fire still burns through his words today. Rumi's poetry is not merely beautiful. It is alive. It breathes, sings, and weeps. And its breath is the breath of Sufism. In Rumi, we see the full flowering of the Sufi path, the annihilation of the self, the intoxication with love, the ceaseless remembrance of the beloved. His words invite us not to read, but to awaken. Not just to admire, but to transform. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? That is the call of Sufism. That is the call of Rumi. So if your heart stirs with longing, if your soul yearns for something beyond the material world, listen. Listen to the poetry. Listen to the silence between the words. You might just hear the whisper of the beloved calling you home. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this path with us. This has been Unfolding Journey, where we explore the mystical, the meaningful, and the sacred. If this resonated with you, if you found light or insight in Rumi's words, we invite you to join us on this journey. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and let's keep exploring the wisdom that nourishes the soul. Until next time, remember, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Peace and blessings.